Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Samantha Cotterill, and let's jump into it.
Excellent. So our mailbag has been filling up a little bit here, and I thought I picked out 3 questions that are all kind of tangentially related to each other in a way. And so I figured we'd tackle these. So the first one is from Betsy. She says, taking the precious out of my pieces. Hi, everyone. I'm a huge fan of your show, and I've learned so much from you. You often say that part of growing as an artist is the ability to not consider every piece to be precious. I will admit that I have a hard time with this. As I develop, I know I need to be more discerning with what I post on social media, try to sell, or even hang on to. Should I simply toss what I've deemed not to be my best, give them away? Or it's so hard when time and material costs goes into things? Any advice for what you do with your, let's call them less successful works, would be much appreciated. So yeah, just to summarize that, like, we all have pieces we're not happy with. How do you guys let go of those, even though you've poured time, energy, creativity, everything into them?
Well, I don't really pour that much time into it if I don't like it. I'm sort of joking, but not really. One of the things that we see a lot at SVS is people overworking the same piece over. And they're doing it at the finished stage. They've already done all the work. And that's when it's excruciating because you do care about it at that point. You have invested all the time. But, our philosophy really amongst almost all of our instructors, I can't think of anybody who deviates from this, is do a bunch of fun, easy, loose work in the beginning. Know that you like the piece, know that you like the value, know that you like the color. And at any point you can bail.
Yeah.
So, as a matter of fact, we gave that advice to somebody last week. We had recommended they fix a piece in a certain way and address a few certain things, not fix it in a specific way, but address a few specific problems. And they presented a sketch and they said, okay, what do you think now? And I'm like, well, show me 10 of those and then we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to try to pick apart one piece and say, oh, if you just move the tree over here, if you just move this thing in the background or change the value, then it's going to work. You know it by working it and being and letting the process really be the main focus of your work, not the finish. If you care about the finish and that's the main portion of your work, it's always going to be precious and it's always going to be hard. That's my thought.
Yeah. I think, I think in what you're talking about is more of an issue of confidence and self-confidence in yourself, of maybe having anxieties about if something's finished or good enough. I'm thinking more along the lines of when you've made something and you just don't think it's any good when you're in that part, when you're done. And I personally think it's all varied, where I just try to look at it as, instead of like a waste, because it's not a waste, it's kind of an analogy, I guess, would be like, I'm super into gardening. That's my hobby during the summer. But you've got compost, right? So you have all this compost that you use. It's not pretty. It's just pile of dirt that just doesn't have anything that's like a gorgeous looking garden. It's just the compost. But the compost is full of all these nutrients and things that you use as you're growing your garden and in creating. So to me, I look at those pieces as kind of compost pieces, and they're just there to become nutrients to kind of help you as you get better with your work. Some of the stuff I reuse, especially with 3D. Mm-hmm. I don't want to make everything precious, because if I do, then I'm not going to grow, because then I just kind of stay in that stagnant place and I don't allow myself to continue growing. So with 3D builds, oftentimes I'm ripping stuff apart. And I know that the reader had said with finances, with cost of materials, there's times where the cost of all the materials to make 3D, I just have to reuse some of the stuff I have. And I force myself to do that. I will take apart cars, take apart houses. And a lot of times when I do that, I create new pieces that are really cool that wouldn't have existed without the framework of those older pieces. I'll paint over things. I'll draw over things. I'll give some things away to family, but that doesn't happen as often because then I know that they've got it displayed in their house. And if I don't like that stuff, I don't want to see it. And then there's a few pieces I'll store away just for looking at down the road. And it's just kind of fun to see your journey. But for the most part, I try to just not give it any like stability in terms of that it's not allowed to be touched because then I'm not going to grow from it. But
yeah, I think too, maybe a good exercise for someone who's like sort of caught up into this, and I get into this phase too, where I have old artwork. I'm going through right now my archives, and I'm like I have these piles of artwork where I'm like, can't justify keeping all of it. It's just taking up space. So I'm making piles of throw away, give away, hang on to, right? And I think it'd be a good exercise is to do that with your artwork, even if it's digital pieces, to like commit to like throw away 1 out of 10 pieces. Just throw them away. And it'll like kind of, I think, shift your brain mindset to what is worth hanging on to and what really isn't worth hanging on to. And then say out of those 10 pieces, throw 1 away, give 2 away, and keep the rest, and archive the rest or whatever. It might be the same thing with digital stuff, like delete the file,
Yeah.
and it's just we live in an age where storing memory is essentially pennies on the dollar. If you have a massive hard drive, you could store as much as you want on there. But in order to like trick your brain into not being so precious about things, you have to like go through that exercise.
Yeah. Well, you made me think about what you just said. I would say I keep 1 out of every 5 pieces or 10
There you
pieces.
go.
I would only keep 1. And I even noticed I like to surround myself with my visuals and things I've done. And I had to force myself to get rid of most of my 3D stuff in my space because I was holding on to it. And I noticed
Right.
that it was really stopping me from fully exploring this kind of new direction I'm going, which is a much more simplified 2D kind of frame of mind. And so I had to go into my room and get rid of everything that was from look, thankful, and I only kept the graphic things around me. And some of them first they went into a box and then I put them in the attic. And then if I haven't touched them in a few months, then I'm just gonna rip them up and reuse them. And then I go back to my early painting days when I was huge into the art fair circuit. I was always doing like Cherry Creek and Des Moines Art Festival, and I was an oil painter. And my best paintings were always the ones that I had painted over old pieces because there was a dimension that came to those and a richness and something that, and to the point where I would get upset if I didn't have anything to paint over anymore. Looking at it as compost.
Wait, why do I not know about this oil painting phase? Cherry Creek, I mean, that's not an easy one to get into. I got rejected from it, and you're like, oh, it was just Cherry Creek.
Cherry Creek. Twice,
Let me see. Can you please pull up some artwork? Surely you have a.
I probably threw everything away. I mean,
you don't have a file? Surely you have a file.
This is when you had to submit slides to get into Cherry Creek.
Oh, so we're talking
We're 90s. Talking 18 years, 20 years ago.
Yeah, but you don't have any digital version of that work? Don't lie. You do.
I have slides. I don't have any digital. I have slides.
That's incredible.
I mean, I was working around then too, and I've got images from back then. You didn't take there were digital cameras back then. You didn't take a picture of anything?
Not really, no, because I was so busy. And what often would happen at these art fairs is I would sell the work or we would trade with each other. And I loved that because none of us could afford each other's work. So we would trade work. That is what I did for a full-time career was I did art festival art. So it was this was way back when there was a huge
Did you know this, Jake?
Book.
I didn't know this. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought her career went clay furniture,
That was first.
children's
That was-
books.
Yeah, we did not know about the art festival middle.
No, it was art degree. Art degree was woodworking and functional art with ceramics. Then realizing there was not a market for life-size furniture out of clay. I was kind of surprised by that. Like, who would want a
What?
300-pound? Oh, even better, it was a 300, like, what? Not 300 pounds, but I made radiators out of clay.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
That was
The market there is huge.
That is a wild swing, but there could be like some gallery, some influential gallery that just takes to you and be like, oh yeah, you're the next new hot thing. And now every like household with a net worth of 50 million or more has a Cotterill in their house in the corner there. A clay radiator.
Well, I did do exhibits
Radiator.
through like Ceramics Monthly, and in Cleveland, I did exhibits with life-size clay chairs. I used to make hand-built chairs, but then it moved to slabs on clay that were painted and flat because then that was more marketable and more easy to do. And then that moved into oil painting. And then, you know,
What subject matter did you paint for these shows?
for oil painting, landscapes.
And you have none of this. I'm going to find an OG.
You will not find anything, I bet.
Oh, I'm fine.
I don't know. It's all landscapes. It was all landscapes. And I painted over eventually. So
What kind of landscapes? Was it like seascapes or
abstract,
trees?
kind of abstracted stuff. And then very British landscapes, I guess I would say. Abstracted.
That's
a bit.
interesting.
And yeah.
Anyway, back to that. Just to wrap up that question, what I want to say one other thing is you need to separate. This is something I think even professionals get caught up in, but it's definitely an amateur thing. And by amateur I don't mean like less. The art is less good. I mean you're coming at it from more of a. It's a thing I do on the side, a thing I do for fun, but whatever. You have to separate process with the final piece, because the two aren't the two don't translate. One doesn't translate into the other. You could spend 10 minutes on a piece that could be worth $10,000, and you could spend 10,000. Not 10,000 hours, that'd be ridiculous, but you could spend 100 hours on a piece that's worthless, right? And so it's not about the time and the materials and the effort put into it that makes a piece valuable. It's the appeal of it. It's the message of it. It's the, is it a part of the zeitgeist? Is it something people are into? And that's why you could see, if in an extreme example, someone tape a banana to a wall and it sell for millions of dollars, whereas someone can, labor over a portrait and not find a buyer for it, or labor over a landscape and not find a buyer for it. So once you separate those two things, it makes it a lot easier to decide which piece has value, which piece is precious, and which piece isn't. And you can do the Marie Kondo thing and hold the piece in your hand, thank it for the time and the experience that it gave you, and then toss it into the fire.
There are weird ones. I don't want to keep beating this dead horse really, but there are weird ones that sometimes that I will initially like an image that I made, and then it gets nothing. People do not respond to it in any way. I've got two painting originals that I'm thinking of specifically, and I feel weird throwing them away because I feel like they were successful pieces. I liked them when I made them. I still like them if I look at them, but the reaction has been crickets. I mean, I'm on like print number 2 on them, when I sell them online, and I still have the original. And I don't know. It's I'm torn in the middle on that one, but I do think you're right that you just have to be able to walk away from it. But I don't know. I mean, art is just a piece of paper. It's not. I mean, if you're building big sets like you are, then maybe you got to tear it down. But if it's just a piece of paper, who cares? Hold on to it if you want to.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Hey guys, thanks for the consistent podcast. Did you guys, as beginners, ever feel the dread of effort it will take to make a drawing? So we're shifting gears to the beginning of the drawing. the dread of effort that it's going to take to do a drawing. Drawing is fulfilling and fun, but it requires so much energy. Does it ever feel more effortless? Does it ever feel lighter? Like you can just sit down and do it? Or will I forever have to fight the effort drawing takes?
I guess it's just all subjective on who you are as a creative. I mean, I look at my mom, and my mom, she's a great painter, and she just finds it very therapeutic, and she just sits down and loves the whole process. And she does get that joy, even though she still has those battles and struggles when she doesn't know what to paint. But that's where I see we're very different. Whereas I am an artist, but I will forever fight that battle of the energy it takes to sometimes get started on a drawing. That's just, I think the difference as I've gotten older is that I've become more familiar with it. I know that that's just part of my process, and that sometimes the effort and the energy really comes into the getting myself started part, and recognizing that sometimes it's just like, I guess it would be like any hobby really, even though this is our job, but like running, people that are avid runners, it's not like every single run you go on is this magical, amazing run that you're like, I love every bit of this run. This is heaven.
Yeah.
You're going to have runs where you're like, oh,
That was a slog.
I don't want to do my run today. And you start it and you go, why am I on this run? And then after like a mile, you force yourself, and then it starts to click and you start feeling better. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's just a run that just sucked that day. And I think there can be a tendency, I worry, with social media and these YouTube images where you're seeing all these beautifully set to music, lifestyle creating, like it makes it look like drawing is supposed to always be this wonderful, poetic, peaceful moment. It isn't for everybody. I mean, it isn't. It's just being familiar that.
Yeah. Lee, do you even today like struggle to like get to work and like to sit down and draw, or is it effortless?
It's never effortless. And I agree with Sam that it's some days are better than others. I mean, I think Sam's example actually from last week we did the Freaky Friday draw along. Yeah. And it was Sam's first one. And we were chatting beforehand. She's a little nervous about drawing in front of everybody, which anybody would be. I don't blame.
And I was horrible in the beginning, but that's okay. I'm fine with it because my nerves were so bad, and I was like horrible in the beginning. It was, but
after about 2 drawings, she was, having fun and flowing, and the work looked good. I mean, in my opinion, the first one was fine too. But I mean, she knows what she's looking for, and that's how I feel sometimes when I sit down. Is like whether it's good or not, it didn't feel right, and you just sort of got to work through that moment and find what's not right about it. But it's never going to just be a smooth experience, especially if I'm in the refinement stage, that's easier because what that means to me is I've got a concept. I've already probably worked through a couple of rough either character designs or compositions or whatever. And now I kind of know the direction that it's going. But in that beginning stage, sometimes you just don't know. And it is true exploration. And if you don't have that feeling, I feel like you're not really pushing yourself. A sketchbook should be ugly in places, and the artwork should be ugly. I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I heard a writer one time, and I cannot remember her name. I wish I could, but it was a long time ago. And she was explaining her relationship with writing, and she said, "This is not a great date. This is a marriage where sometimes I hate the writing. I hate it. I don't want to do it, and it doesn't let me in, and I'm mad at it in a way." Yeah. And, just like a marriage, there's every emotion you're going to have. You just go through the full gamut. And I thought that was the most accurate description ever because it's so multifaceted. The run's a good example too. I mean, you definitely aren't just it's not going to be enjoyable every time. And as long as you know that, and it's become, I've been talking about this a lot over the past 2 months, but developing a practice is the most important thing you could do. It's not developing finished pieces. It's not doing a portfolio. It's developing a practice where you can get your butt in the seat and make things and go through all those stages.
And what you brought up, that was brilliant, because in that moment when we did that draw along together, in the beginning, it was so rusty and it was uncomfortable. And I was wanting to quit in a moment because I was so overwhelmed with people watching me, because I've never, ever drawn in front. I can't draw in front of family members. Like I don't. And so but then the minute it started to crack, and the flowing started to happen, there was just the fun that she's talking about started to come in. And there was a moment when we were drawing, and I'll never forget it, where we were just having fun. And then I was like, I'm going to add some elbow patches. And you're like, me too. And I'm going to add, and that moment was just like, I feel like a kid right now drawing, like, this is fun. And that in that second, that was the moment that this reader's talking about. But it took me a bit to get to that moment.
Right.
It doesn't happen every drawing and full drum, and that's okay. And I think the energy that you're putting into that work, sometimes that work's going to give you some energy back. And that was the moment that all the energy that I had put into trying to get over my fear, trying to get used to, then it rewarded me with that energy back. And I want to do it more. I want to do it again. And like, I'm dying to do it again. And I think the sketchbook that you brought up was a good point. That again is another situation that I get worried about, seeing all of the sketchbook posts that present sketchbooks as these finished pieces of art that in a way kind of go beyond inspiring and instead can become intimidating, where the sketchbook is no longer seen as a place to be able to mess up and just produce drawings for yourself. And we've kind of shifted it into
it's another portfolio piece.
Look at this. And it's always said with this humble, I just whipped this up. Look, I just kind of thing. So I think it's learning to recognize that that is not really the purpose of a sketchbook. And
about a month ago, I did a YouTube video on sketchbooks, and I have this idea that I've started to somewhat implement. I just haven't had sketchbook time, but essentially you have three or more sketchbooks. And one sketchbook is your throwaway sketchbook. It's the one that you just go in there and you practice drawing 100 hand poses, and you practice drawing head turns, and you scribble around, and it's like your training sketchbook. It'd be like your reps sketchbook, and then you have your research and development sketchbook. So this is your sketchbook where you just want to explore ideas, and you're kind of going in, and wouldn't it be cool if there was like a turtle that was like super good at ninja skills, right? And maybe he has 3 other brothers, and you come up with this thing only to realize it's already been thought of. But like it's your let your imagination go, a sketchbook. And then your third sketchbook is you take one of those research and development ideas and you think it has legs, and this is your project sketchbook. So it's everything. Anytime you return back to one of these ideas, you go back to that particular sketchbook and you fill it front to back with everything that you would want to put into that particular project. And so is it unreasonable? Maybe not. Is it a better way to organize stuff? Maybe so. It's something I think would be like beneficial to be able to, when you come to sit down to actually do the graphic novel or to do the children's book or to do, the tarot deck or something, you whip open that one sketchbook and it's got all of your ideas related to that idea. I think that actually might be super helpful.
Can I say that's the most Jake Parker answer ever?
It totally is. It's funny because it totally is. And I'm learning that I think my problem is that the sketches are in a book. And I think that's my limiting problem. I notice that I am better with random pieces of paper, and I just throw them into a bucket, or I'm better at that. Like if I'll grab I'll grab a receipt and draw on the back of it, or I'll find a piece, then I draw more. But the minute you put the paper into a book, suddenly it becomes a thing.
I tell you, if you can switch that, we always think of sketchbooks as books, like you're saying, as being bound in some way. But for a long time, I used a 3-ring binder, and that way I could put in different kinds of paper for different parts of it. But the benefit was I always knew I could just pop those rings and pull that piece out. And it was a different feeling than ripping something out of a bound book.
Oh yeah. That's a good idea.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It was very freeing. And like I said, it gave me the ability to have watercolor paper and regular, office paper for different stuff. I don't always want to draw on watercolor paper if I'm just doing a sketch, so.
I actually have, you can't see it from this camera angle, but if you were to look over this way, I have like 5 or 6 or 7 binders of sketch, because I used to do the same thing. I would just sketch on copy paper. And so I had these stacks that were essentially my sketchbooks for years. And one day I was like, I want to be able to like leaf through these easier. So I had my assistant that was helping me. I was like, okay, your job this week is to take this stack of papers and put them into sheet protectors and put them in these binders so that I can just go through them easier. And so that's another way to go about it. So you don't just have a stack of papers there. You can actually, have this archivable book.
You're missing out the fun of complete surprise. I have a big dresser in the family room that is just shoved with random drawings. And do you know how fun it is to pull out the big drawer, sit on the floor, and just go through them? And then you're like, oh, look at this. Oh, look. I'm a little bit more of the chaos theory.
Right.
My problem is I never go through them again, and they just sit in there. And then my wife's like, what are you doing with all this stuff? It's everywhere. I never go through them again. That's why I like having them in a book, because it'll be like 2 years later, and I'm like, oh, yeah, there was something I remembered that I wanted to draw at some point or whatever. So.
Yeah.
So that leads me to this question is each one of us is married. Is your spouse, it seems like each one of our spouses is way more organized and analytical and like balances out our like crazy artist.
All right, let's just give you a little analogy here. So my husband's biomedical engineering professor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just look at it this way. When we mow the lawn, when I mow the lawn, I'm coming along and I'm like, oh, there's a stick. I better grab it and throw it out the way so I can keep going. And then I move to the next line. There's that stick again. Pick it up, throw it, keep going. And it's good enough. My husband will go out ahead of time and spend forever getting every little twig. And then my neighbor, she's like, I'm watching him mow. I think he's mowed over that same spot like 10,000 times. It takes him like 5 hours to mow the lawn because he might as well just go out with little scissors and just sit there and
trim each piece of grass.
Yeah. And here I am. I'm like, good enough. Good enough. Yeah, we're very different.
Yes. For sure. Well, and I know Lisa. I've worked with Lisa for years now, and she's not Lee White, that's for sure. And Lee White is not Lisa.
My whole business would crumble without that.
Yeah, right? Me too. I could not be married to myself.
I mean, I showed up yesterday, 24 hours early, saying, "Guys, why are we not doing the podcast?" I mean, I don't know what's going on with my wife. She's the one.
Like, you're on time, 24 hours early. I want to do one last thing with this question, then we'll move on to the last question. But the one question there, does it ever feel more effortless? Does it ever feel lighter? And going back to like the working out analogy, if you're maintaining muscle mass, or you want to grow muscle mass, or you want to just stay fit, going to the gym never ever feels effortless, because you're always the whole point of it is to push your body into where it's uncomfortable so that you stay fit. And the only way I could see drawing becoming effortless is if I go into this phase where I'm just drawing stuff I've already drawn and I'm not exploring and I'm not pushing myself. And so if you're doing it right, if you're doing it wrong, it's going to feel effortless. If you're doing it right,
and what you just said there,
effort.
I think the point is to marry that word effortless with joy. So effortless without joy is attainable, but effortless with joy can be harder to get, but it will happen. But I think.
Yeah. Okay. Last question here is, here, guys. Hi, guys. This is my second time writing. You were kind enough to answer my first question a few years ago. I got really excited when you read my query in the What If Freelance Isn't For Me episode. And it was about finding it hard to settle on a style. So I followed your advice, did the work, and I believe my portfolio is a bit more cohesive, and I would really appreciate it if you could have a look at it. I don't know if you guys remember this person. I'm gonna just share my screen here really quick. We're just gonna do a brief look at this this portfolio here, and you could see. I do remember. Looks like they cleaned out some of their older stuff, but this person's doing some good quality professional work. It's definitely artsy.
I like the colors. That's gorgeous.
But this person looks like they have a voice, and they're not they're still exploring, but they've definitely found themselves to some degree, I think, which is really cool. So I would say good job finding that style and leaning into really growing and focusing as an artist. But there's another question. So this isn't just a follow-up. This is another question. I think we'll take this person's questions every 2 years if they want. My favorite type of illustrators are messy, painterly, and expressive, like Daniel Igneous and George Gonzalez. I don't know. Are you familiar with those two illustrators?
Oh yeah, the first one.
Did I pronounce his name right? Igneous?
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure about that either. Okay. So anyways, he likes painterly and expressive illustrations, but I just couldn't get clients for that type of work. And so I ended up going up a more traditional way, which feels a little generic, but managed to get a few commissions that way. I want to ask you if you have faced this kind of problem and how do you deal with it? So yeah, Sam already mentioned this. She found that nobody would buy a particular kind of artwork she was making, so she shifted gears. And I think the deeper question to this is, are you betraying yourself or a version of yourself if you're sort of kowtowing or changing your work so that it is more palatable so that you can get more work, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure this is a tough one because the work of Daniel, I mean, I know instantly that he would love it as well because it does have the sensibilities of the work we love, like with Victoria Semikina and stuff. So I don't know that doesn't get work. So for me, I think that work is beautiful, and I almost sensed a bit of a sadness in the message of that wanting to be the work they want to go down. And when you showed me that website, was the top panel completely different and more rough in the way that he was probably interested? Do you have the website?
Yeah, I can pull that up again.
Did you notice that as well? I feel like there were two different sites.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a variation between like this piece, would you say?
No, I'm in the top of the website. So
up here,
right there, the top.
Oh, I got you.
Oil kind of marks.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so there are two different creators on that website. And to me, I get this feeling that this creator really wants to be leaning towards what's at the top and is feeling like this maybe route that they're going down isn't fulfilling them at all. So I do think it's important to find some kind of marriage that will feed you, that you do get that sensibility that you want in the artwork. How are you responding to that?
Well, I mean, I just went to their website here and you could see this work is not the work that's on their Behance page, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is like, you look at this and this is definitely essentially what we're looking at here for the list for people who aren't on YouTube. It's like a Jackson Pollock, but with a little bit more control and a little bit more expression in a way. you can see this. There's splatters of paint, but there's also mixing of paint, and there's some sort of tool that's been scraped over it.
Okay.
It is, you look at this and then you look at this, and it's hard to see hard to tell if they're the same artist. So when you go back and forth to like this cityscape with these hands growing out of the center of the city, and it's all line work and whatnot, and then you go here and it's just pure emotion expressed through oil paint. It's hard to it's hard to reconcile the two of them, right? Let me ask you, so what would you do in this situation? I kind of feel like you got to do what you got to do to get the work, to get paid for your work. And so if that means you have a portfolio that is your professional, let's get some work made, let's get some freelance jobs, let's get hired to do some stuff. And then you save this other style just for yourself, and it's not attached to capitalism. It's just attached to the joy of it. I think that's might be a good way to live, to handle your career, because you're not neglecting either side of it.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if it's warrants exploring kind of a little bit of a merger of the two to find a balance that feeds both. Because in the other website, there was a image with a cloud and a more graphic figure underneath that I almost could see in that
This one?
No, the other website. So not the.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you see the cloud with the figure, to me, I can see a little bit of a connection with the illustrations on Behance that I almost wonder if it's worth, maybe the full on really intense kind of rough stuff wasn't getting the client work. You did try this new, and I do see some joy in the other work, but maybe it just means trying to find some balance between the two that can feed both of those for you that still gets you. Because this piece to me feels like there's something working between those two that might create something that gives more joy in creation.
I'm getting, I'm thinking of like the successful artist that I think best exemplifies sort of the blend between what I'm seeing on his personal website and what I'm seeing on his outward facing, like Behance, is like a Sean Tan type of thing, where he's combining really storytelling illustration with very experimental painting techniques.
Sean Tan's a good person to look at for that. I do think that would be exactly what Sam is saying, like the middle ground of those two things. It's funny because they are so different. I mean, even how much like the digital stuff, there's so much detail. And then the painterly stuff is so simplistic. And I'm just wondering why they are so far apart. It just seems like there's a super logical middle ground. And, I don't think you probably gave it the fair shot of saying, oh, this other work didn't sell. Well, if it's totally abstract oil paintings, of course it didn't sell. Who's the market for that? That's a really tough market to find. Then they're saying, oh, I went this other way. And then I got a little bit of client work. Well, of course you did, because there's like 1,000% more clients in that space. There's, magazine illustration and advertising and video games and everything else that, any other way to sell an illustration. So I agree with Sam. Like if you can find, simplify the illustration and then bring in some of those textures, but still maintain some of the things that are working from the illustration side of things. I think this is a 3 or 4 month project probably to get 12 pieces that sort of merge that. And then you're happy and the clients will probably see your joy in that as well.
Yeah. I don't know a ton about like the fine art world, but my understanding is if you're really going to be successful in that world, you have to have a partnership with a gallery, because people who spend $50,000, $20,000, $100,000 on a painting, yes, the painting is somewhat appealing to them, but it's also an investment. and they're hoping to sell that painting in 10 years at twice the amount that they bought it for. And a lot of times too, they're not buying the painting, they're buying the story. So when somebody comes into their apartment and they see this beautiful painting on their penthouse wall, or their vacation home, they're like, oh, what's this? Oh, this is so-and-so. Oh, tell me about that artist. Well, and they start telling the story behind the painting, and it becomes less and less about the artwork and more about status, I think. And that is a game you can play and you can try to get into and whatnot. I know artists who it doesn't have to be abstract art. It could be you're painting pictures of cowboys, right? And it's the same thing. A wealthy rancher who has a cabin up in up in the Rocky Mountains is going to need paintings to put on the wall. And where do they go to get those paintings? They're going to talk to their contacts and their gallery connections and whatnot. And I need paintings that fit, it might even be them doing it. It might be an interior designer who's like figuring out for them. And they're like, well, I need a painting that fits these dimensions and I need a painting that does this. And then eventually a person might really fall in love with an artist and they'll commission particular pieces for a particular spot on a wall at a particular building that they have. You can definitely go down that route, but I don't know of anybody who has done that completely on their own. They've all gone through people who have like connections in that world.
That's true. It's a tough market. I mean, and part of it is your own resume. Like if you didn't go to the right school, even if the paintings are great, you can't get in. It's a weird world.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we can wrap it up there. That was
sounds good.
Yeah, it was a good, nice little art chat. A little bit of different tone and pace from our last few videos. So thanks for hanging around, everybody. Yeah. Any last thing you guys want to talk about? Anything you're working on or want to promote?
One little thing I wanted to add because we were talking about the Freaky Friday draw along thing, and how much fun Sam and I were having at the end of the last one. If you're not drawing from other people, like in other words, having some kind of master copy practice, I talked about a practice earlier. Doing master copies is part of what we do a lot in the Freaky Friday draw along, even though it's loose and we're playing and we can change the reference source or whatever. This past week we were doing characters and just something me and Sam thought we would do. We liked some of the ink work that from the references we picked. And, I've been doing so many buildings and cityscape kind of stuff, landscape-ish type paintings with watercolor. I've been shying away from the figures, trying to figure out what kind of figures do I want to actually draw? I mean, I'm a little bit bored with how I draw figures. So I just had no inspiration really to explore figures lately. And we got into this draw along thing and we were doing these images that were so much fun. They were so free. It was a different way than I approached the drawing characters. That when I was like midway through it, like Sam said, we were like, I want to do more of this. We were chatting out even after the show, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to continue doing some of these things. And it was just so transformative to be able to live in someone else's shoes for an hour and just play like, oh my God, I would never draw a leg like that. I would never draw a body shape like this. And in this medium and in this way, it was so freeing and just so different from how I did. And it's all character. Like, I make characters really small in big environments, sort of just naturally thing that I do, but I'd love to do more character-based stuff. And I guess it's just a testament to, try a bunch of hats on for size and you never know what you're going to get. I mean, I just got absolutely inspired in a way that I had no idea that I was going to. I mean, I knew I liked the drawings anyway, but I didn't know how much fun that was going to be and how I could say, oh, what can, I don't want to draw just like the person that we were doing the copies from, but what did I enjoy so much about it? That becomes my question afterwards. And like, now becomes the sketchbook work of you start playing and saying, what was it the medium that I liked? Was it the shapes that she started with? What was it? So I'm diving down that road. But man, oh man, just living in somebody else's shoes for a little while is so much fun and, gets the pen moving. And I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah. I want to say something along with that, I was a friend of mine's working on a comic, and he shared with me the first 5 pages of it, and it was really well done. It was really beautiful, taking place in the desert, and you've got desert fauna. You got this like coyote chasing a jackrabbit, and you have a character running through it. And all of a sudden, there's a scene where a bad guy like lights the desert on fire, and the fire honestly looked like it looked like the fire you drew in 6th grade when you were like, oh, I know what fire looks like.
Cartoon fire.
It looks like this, almost like the Thrasher shirt you're wearing, Lee.
Yeah.
It would look like that, and it just did not tonally match any of this other like really stylistic choices. And I told him, I'm like, everything's great here except this fire looks completely amateur. Like you just phoned it in. Like you didn't even look at cool fire reference. And I went on Pinterest and in like 30 seconds had found 5 different examples of like cool animated fire drawings, right? Mm-hmm. And I just sent those over to him, like, do yourself a favor, look at these, interpret it in your style, and redo that fire. And he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think to look at reference for fire. And I was like, you guys, I live or die by reference. Like I'm always pulling stuff up and feeding off of it. And I think that is just something that a lot of amateur artists think, like, I got to stand on my own 2 legs. I got to do this on my own. I'm like, stand on the shoulders of giants, like do that. Mm-hmm. You were saying, Sam?
That's exactly what I do. I mean, I have it right now. I'm trying to design. I had a meeting with a publisher in Europe a couple days ago. And so I have to generate a bunch of environments and character designs. And so I'm designing like an ice cream shop right now. But right now I've got a sketch surrounded by all these images I've pulled from Pinterest that are like vintage ice cream shop pieces, mid-century illustrations of buildings I love. And I'm just taking the bits that I love from them. And then how can I kind of incorporate this and make this into my own? And then once you start doing it, you start to get ideas and but that's the only way I can do it. I have to start with something. I can't just start without like empty space and like, I'm going to do this. Like, doesn't work that way. So that's how I am. Anyway.
Hey, let me just add one more little thing to that. If you are interested in exploring what we're talking about here and coming along and doing a Freaky Friday draw along, we do it every other week. And then one of those sessions is for everybody in our community. And so you're welcome to come on and check out SVS Learn, where you can draw with us. And we present different themes every other week for what we've done: boats, and we've done tikis, and we've done characters in ink and dragons and all kinds of stuff.
It's so fun.
It really is fun.
It's so fun.
Yep. Come join us. Check us out. SVS, if you haven't already. And that's right. SVS is the sponsor of 3-Point Perspective. This podcast, which we've been doing for 7 years now, I think. Has it been that long? 2018 is when we started.
So we just calculated we've done like 200 and something episodes, right?
Episode 265.
Wow.
Dang. I know there's other podcasts that are like, oh, we've been doing it for 20 years and we're in episode 2000, but how many of those are art podcasts? It's specifically focused on illustration with half-baked thoughts on the craft of it. Anyway, you're not going to get that kind of stuff other than this place here. So let me just give a shout out to everybody who helps make this thing possible. But first off, your hosts today are Sam Cotterill, Lee White, and I'm Jake Parker. And a special thanks to everybody involved at SVS, our podcast producer, Daniel Tu, our team manager, Preston Smith, our keeper of the community, Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.